Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2018 film Dis, and I went ahead and rented it through Vudu. For people who don't know, that's a service where you can rent or buy digital movies. It's run by Fandango. Now, the interesting thing is, I said this is from 2018. That's what Internet Movie Database said, but Vudu said it was from 2019, and then Letterboxd said it was from 2017. So which one's the actual one? I don't know. I tend to trust IMDb more, but who knows. But anyway, let's get into Dis, which is a weird one, is a unsettling one, but it also kind of an interesting one. Let's get into it. Oh, and I do need to say that this one, shout out to the Movie Detective. This goes out to you. This review is dedicated to the Movie Detective, who's been a longtime subscriber of my channel, so thank you so much. He's been trying to get me to watch this movie and review it for some time. So I'm finally doing it. There you go. Written and directed by Adrian Corona, who also did Nariz Loca and What is Gothic, which I have not seen either of those. Corona actually supposedly chose the shooting location for this film for its, quote, natural evil feel, which, I mean, it's a great shooting location for what you're looking for. I mean, nothing says horror like a dilapidated building with graffiti on it in the middle of a forest. Just saying. It was actually a sanitarium at one point. It was a psychiatric hospital at one point, and it's located in Veracruz, Mexico. So, very careful choosing of the location, and I think it really did pay off because it really does help kind of get that dark, unsettling, also lonely and abandoned feeling to the movie because, you know, you don't have a lot of characters and the character's very remote and by himself, the main character, Ariel. The opening quote is a good context to have for it. It really does point to what's really going on in this film, which is the whole lore of the Mandrake root and how Mandrake root has been said to have a place within witchcraft in history. I'll actually read you. Got a definition for a mandrake root off of, I think it was from Oxford Dictionary online, and it says, a Mediterranean plant of the nightshade family with white or purple flowers and large yellow berries. It has a forked, fleshy root that supposedly resembles the human form, which I do think you see in this movie, and was formerly widely used in medicine and magic, allegedly shrieking when pulled from the ground. Now, this was something that actually showed up, if people have seen it, in the Harry Potter movies. They were actually using mandrake roots, and they had like this terrible shriek, which happens in the beginning of the movie, and they have that quote. It's a very interesting quote. It really does set up the context for the whole movie very appropriately because this is about the lore of the mandrake root, and I think that this is kind of a take on how do the mandrake root come to fruition, and through this movie's point of view, it is through the blood and the seed of criminals, basically, and that's what's really going on here with the film. So talk more about that as we go on. So it is a unique take, in my opinion, and this is actually something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot in film. The whole mandrake root thing really does not get used, except I think Harry Potter's one of them, and then there was a movie that came out on Shudder recently called Mandrake, and that was the only other time I've ever seen Mandrake used in any movie. So they're mining underused material in this movie. The crying baby and squealing pig noise that comes after the opening quote, I assume is the screaming of the mandrake root, that fabled screaming, shrieking noise that it makes. Very effectively made, very unsettling, very grating type noise that can really kind of go through you in a sense because it is so shrill and it is so distressing in the way that it sounds. Because a pig squealing sounds distressing, a baby crying sounds distressing. You mash those two things together and it's like double distressing. The relative silence in the beginning of the movie really does amp up the tension and lets the sound design stand out as well, which I think also helps to amp up the tension in the movie. This is something that I love that when films do, is use silence a lot because, like I said, it does give the sound design more time to shine. And if it's done well, which I do believe the sound design is done pretty well in this movie, it adds to the movie. And for this movie in particular, it adds to that feeling of not much going on. I mean, it's a very good representation of what's being experienced by the main character, Ariel, is that there's no one around. It is quiet for the most part until small noises are made, or big noises in the form of, taking on the big bad guy in this, who's looks like maybe they are a human-sized mandrake root, I think. That's what I think is going on. Definitely an odd twist to the beginning scene where the masked man manually stimulates the chained woman instead of killing her like you would assume it was going to do. That's where things go very off kilter with the movie. You're assuming just kind of like a straightforward maybe torture going on, definitely death going on, but that doesn't happen. Immediately it doesn't happen. But you see it and you're just kind of like, okay, this is taking an odd turn. And that may make some people very uncomfortable, because when sexual things like that show up in movies, it can get very uncomfortable for a lot of people. I'm okay with it, but it does feel, especially in that setting and how they shot it, it does feel very icky. Like very, very, very icky. Yeah. Even though not much is going on in the beginning, I found myself very entertained, mostly due to the scenery that I'm looking at, which is looking pretty nice, but also the cinematography. This film is shot very well. It aesthetically looks great. It kind of has that kind of drab palette to it, but it also is getting, it's walking this weird line of like looking very drab and dour, but it also looks kind of beautiful. Not the really terrible, like, abandoned building and, like, dark moments like that, but, like, out in the woods in the beginning when Ariel's kind of going about his life. It's interesting how Ariel sees the masked and caped person and is going to potentially shoot them until breasts are revealed. I'm wondering if this is kind of pointing at his loneliness being disarming to him. Or it could also kind of be pointing to his past, which we end up finding out about later with the black and white sequence, which is the flashback of him actually assaulting and killing a woman. So that, that's his aspect of being a criminal and why he's usable for the mandrake, for growing mandrake, because his blood and his seed will suffice because he is a criminal. When Ariel finds the dead pig in the abandoned building, it looks like the graffiti on the wall shows a woman and a pig being intimate. That was kind of weird. I don't know what the significance of that one was. Maybe it was trying to show nature and humanity being forced together in order to create something terrible, which would be the mandrake root in this instance. I think maybe that was kind of like the symbolism with that, but I'm not 100% sure. It is a very weird visual, and it does make you wonder if human and animal sexual relations are going to come up in the movie, because after seeing the beginning of the movie, it does seem like nothing is off bounds for the most part. You kind of wonder where this thing is going. The black and white flashback appears to be the backstory for Ariel. It is, but also doesn't give you much except the salve and Ariel assaulting the woman. So in my opinion, and this is kind of one of the big issues with the movie, I do think that it does kind of have pacing issues. I do think this would have been better as a short film if you cut it down more. It would have been a really good short film, in my opinion. It is only an hour, so that's fair. I'm glad they didn't try and stretch it out to an hour and a half. But especially when you have the backstory sequence, it seems like there's a bunch of filler in general. It seems like there's a bunch of filler in this movie. In some instances, it's fine because there's that awesome visual aspect to it, like in the beginning, where you're just getting a bearing for what your environment is. You're just meeting the main character, seeing what's going on, and just taking things in. That's fine. But once you get to this flashback sequence, there's more wasted time, as in, what are we getting out of this? Like, why are we having this flashback in the first place? You do understand it is for the backstory aspect, but there's not enough thrown in there about the person. Like, we don't care about this individual. I don't know if that was intentional just from the standpoint of you shouldn't care about him because he is a criminal. I thought it would have played out better if they endear you to the main character in some way, like give him a lot more humanity instead of just being kind of neutral on him from the beginning, and endear the audience to him, because then it feels more disgusting and more messed up if you've been feeling that way about him when you find out that he is in fact a murderer, an assaulter and murderer. So I'm just saying that's my thought on the movie. A salve made from a hanged killer's jizz. I would pass on that one. So obviously the guy in the flashback that Ariel meets is using this salve for something. But I'm just saying personally, if someone's like, here's a salve, it's made with a hanged criminal's jizz, no thank you. I don't know what the purpose of it was. I may have missed it because there were some issues with dialogue levels, the audio levels for dialogue, in my opinion. Another one of the issues that I had with the movie. But yeah, wouldn't be using that salve. Just saying. When he's chained up, you get the feeling what's going to happen to Ariel is similar to that of what happened to the woman in the opening sequence. I feel everyone probably had about that feeling. That is basically what does end up happening. Although, his demise is different than her demise. She was, had thrown herself off the edge of that abandoned building, and you could see at that point that Ariel is very upset because he saw the nudity. He wanted to get at her. I think that's kind of his messed up compulsion from his past of wanting to assault her and, maybe even killing her too. I don't know. Of course, the masked man plants jizz, because why not with this movie? When he's actually planting the mandrake root, he's just like pouring, jizz in the ground, and I assume mixing in some blood, probably with a mandrake seed. Although I don't know, were they trying to say that just the blood and the jizz would just form the mandrake, or did you need a seed? I don't know. I didn't really get that aspect of it, and maybe that's going too deep. I don't know, but that's what I do with these. When Ariel is chained up naked at the end, that has to be some of the worst head ever. And by the way, sorry for the weird flashing that went on. Don't know what happened there. But when he's chained up, first of all, that's got to be an uncomfortable scene for a lot of people because full frontal nudity is not a thing. But then they take it further, and the sexual act. I was just watching it. And I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing. They're going there. I was like, because of course. And then I was like, that has to be pretty terrible, though. I mean, there is a pleasure aspect to it because he did finish, but that's got to be pretty terrible experience. I'm just saying, some of the worst head ever. It has no big ending to the movie. It just seems like you saw one part of an endless cycle, which I feel like that was kind of the point, is that this has been going on for a long time. But at the same time, I do get this feeling of then why does this particular portion matter? Why does this little glimpse into this endless cycle actually matter? And that's why I think that it would have been better to endear the main character to the audience, because then you would have that feeling of oh man, this is why it matters. I feel so conflicted. Because as the movie is, you don't really feel that conflicted. You feel neutral about the main character, and then you find out that he's terrible, and then he's dead, and then you're just like, oh, okay. I mean, it's an interesting concept, and it's an interesting story, and like I said, they're mining something, the Mandrake root lore, that's not mined a lot, but I just think it needed to be personalized to the audience a bit more. Everything in this movie looks so bleak, but it also looks kind of beautiful in a depressing sort of way. So I really did like the visuals of this. That's one of my favorite things about it. The uniqueness of the story concept, even though I don't think the story was fleshed out very well, in my opinion. It's very simplistic, overly simplistic, especially for how long it is, even though it's only an hour. But it's beautifully shot. It looks phenomenal, in my opinion. The ADR sounds too clean a lot of times, and it makes it stand out in a bad way, unfortunately. So where I was saying that the sound design is really good, the actual ADR that they did for all the speaking parts sounds way too clean. It sounds like it's not actually happening within the environment that the scenes are. So that really kind of takes me personally out of the movie. It just didn't sound right. They didn't do a good job with that ADR. The other thing is audio levels on that ADR was not great. They need to equalize it more. There were a lot of times where, unless he was yelling, I wasn't really able to hear a whole lot of what Ariel was saying. So that's unfortunate. I do like that this is about the Mandrake lore because it's not used very much. And then, yeah, my last thing was that I just had the Mandrake definition. So, in general, I didn't hate that I've seen this movie, but it's not one that I would necessarily recommend to people, especially because it is kind of messed up and uncomfortable. But there's enough merit to it that I respect it enough, but I don't love it. So basically what I'm getting to is, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it 2.5-star rating. I was between 2.5 and 2, but I think there's enough stuff there, like the uniqueness of it, the sound design, how it's shot extremely well, the concept being great too. I think I can go 2.5, but know that I also considered going as low as 2. But this is where Movie Detective can jump in the comments and say why he enjoyed it this much, or as much as he did, and maybe give us some other facts, because that is what he does, hence the name The Movie Detective. So anyone, though, feel free to comment your thoughts on this movie, liked it, hated it, in between. I assume a lot of people did not like it, but it had very low rating on Vudu, by the way. I think it was like not even 2 stars on Vudu. It was like 1.5 or something like that. But yeah, I think it was better than that for sure. But anyway, thanks everyone for checking this out. Please do me a favor and hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That is your best way to repay me if you like this video or any video that I've ever done. Also hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 a week at this point, plus like a short here or there, short movie reviews. But anyway, thanks everyone so much for checking this out, and until next time, keep it brutal.